I'm going to show you how to make some covered clothesline coasters based on my pattern from Indigo Junction of quick clothesline carryalls. For each coaster, you'll need 80 inches of cotton clothesline, about 82 to 84 inches of fabric that's cut 1.5 to 2 inches. It doesn't have to be exactly rotary cut because you're going to be trimming off the edges, and you'll need a jeans needle either in a 110 or a 100. The jeans needles are very sharp and will pierce through the thick clothesline without any trouble. The fabric piece that I am using, the big piece was 72 inches, so I'm going to add on another little chunk to make it long enough. Oftentimes I just use 2 cuts off the width of fabric, which is usually about 42 inches wide, and then piece those together. For fun, you can also piece scraps together and you can get a multicolored coaster, and that really works well. I've pieced my fabric together. I've put on my zipper foot, and I have selected on my Dream machine stitch 1-02, which is the straight stitch in the far left position. Wrap the fabric around the cord about 1 inch down from the top and place it in your machine so that the needle will sew right next to the cord. Basically, you're making a piping at this point. Sew the entire length, again, very close to the edge of the clothesline, and I'm using again that straight stitch in the far left position. Okay, I'm almost to the end of the 80 inches. You can see where I said the fabric does not have to be cut exactly because all of this excess is going to be trimmed off in the next step. I have used a jelly roll strip, which is 2.5 inches wide, cut it carefully in half, and used 1.25 inches, but it's pretty frustrating, and I wouldn't recommend it unless you absolutely want to use that fabric. When you're about the end, you can see this is the end of my cord. Leave a back stitch a little bit, and then leave about 2 inches of fabric. I'll trim the rest of this fabric off, and this extra you'll tuck in at the end of the coaster. Take some nice sharp scissors and carefully cut the excess very close to your stitching, but not into the stitching, and do this for the whole length of the cord. I've now selected the zigzag stitch. On my machine it's 1-10. I've made the width at 5 and the length at 3.5. I have switched feet to an open toe foot, and I feel that that gives me a lot of visibility with the zigzags. I have a Metler black thread in my machine, a black cotton thread, and I also again have a 100 jeans needle. When you start your coaster, you start with the end that has that, it's about 1 inch to 1/2 inch. You want your long cord to come off to the right, and you want to twist it in a little, kind of a little starting knot with the extra fabric underneath and that seam toward the bottom. And this part is where you're going to start to zigzag. I have that little knot under my machine, and I'm going to start to zigzag, and it's going to be a little putsy at first until you get a little bigger area to work with. You will need to turn your project every few stitches until you get going. And as I'm zigzagging, I'm making sure that the left swing is on the left cord and the right swing is on the right cord, and I'm also tucking that cut trimmed edge underneath. So every few stitches I'm stopping to configure the placement. Now when you come to this little area, you can just stitch over it with your cord. As it gets a little bigger, you're going to be able to go a little faster. As the project gets bigger, you can see that it goes along pretty quickly, and that you really don't have to stop and rearrange your cord. I would say be a tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race. It's actually very relaxing. Just remember to keep the space where the two cords are being sewn together in the middle of your foot, so that in the swing of the needle both sides of the cord is caught, because it's easy to get so relaxed that you just sort of wander off, and before you know it, you're off course. I'm almost to the end of my coaster, to that little extra bit that I left to tuck under, and as you're approaching the end, just tuck that extra amount of fabric underneath and then zigzag off. I usually do a little bit of a back stitch, but not too heavy. That back will be covered by the wool felt that I'm going to show you how to put on. Okay, I've cut a piece of wool felt a little larger than my coaster. This happens to be National Non-Wovens wool felt. I forgot to mention that if you want a bigger coaster, just increase your length of the clothesline you use to longer than 80 inches. If you want, let's say, a placemat or a table mat, you can make the covered clothesline as long as you want. I'm switching to a straight stitch, a middle in the middle, and I'm going to put my stitch length at about 3, and I'm going to use the toe of my foot just to follow along the edge of the coaster. A little back stitch there, and it may or may not fall in one of the edges of the clothesline, but just keep going around the coaster with the straight stitch, and you're going to be covering the messy start and possibly the messy end, and you'll have a nice finished back for your coaster. When you get to that little join, make sure you've got that raw edge tucked under, and it is, and pretty soon I'm going to be back to where I started, and I'll do another little back stitch, and that's it. This is what the back looks like. I'm just going to go ahead with my scissors and trim very close to the stitching all the way around. I suppose I could have embroidered a little message on this wool felt, like maybe happy birthday or get well soon or whatever. And now you have a great little coaster. At this point, I would probably give it a nice steam press, but I think it looks really cute. If you have any questions, you can contact me at geraldine.lieski@yahoo.com.